Welcome to Leader Lifestyle Hub. As we have set the target of completing 200 books in the entire year, here comes the book number 167. The name of the book that we have today is The Infinite Game, written by Simon Sinek. I don't need to give the information of the author because you might have already heard about Simon Sinek, who wrote about Start with Why. Let us see the target audience and the top 3 lessons of this book. The 17-year-old ambitious athlete who throws a tantrum every time he loses a game. The 42-year-old CFO who sometimes fails to see the big picture for all the numbers. And anyone who wants to build a business that can survive for 100 years or more. Let us see the small synopsis. The infinite game argues that business is not a competition but an infinite journey, and that to do well in it, leaders must advance a just cause, build trusting teams, learn from their worthy rivals, and practice existential flexibility. Let me repeat this. The Infinite Book. This book argues that business is not a competition, but an infinite journey. Business is an infinite journey. And that to do well in it means if you want to do well in the business, leaders must advance a just cause, build trusting teams, learn from their worthy rivals, competitors, and practice existential flexibility. Let us listen from the Simon Sinek, the author himself. Our lives are finite, but life is infinite. This is a powerful quotation. Our lives are finite, but life is infinite. We are the finite players in the infinite game of life. We come and go. We are born and we die. And life still continues with us or without us. This is a powerful quotation that I liked from this book. At one point, both Apple and Microsoft invited Simon Sinek to present at their education summits within the span of a few months. Comparing the two experiences after the fact, Sinek noticed something. At the Microsoft event, the majority of the presenters devoted a good portion of their presentations to talking about how they were going to beat Apple. Whereas at the Apple event, 100% of the presenters spent 100% of their time talking about how Apple was trying to help teachers teach and help students learn. This is the difference between Microsoft and Apple team. Apple team focus on how it helps teachers and students, whereas the Microsoft presentators are focused on how it is different from Apple, how they are going to beat Apple. This marks the difference between a company that thinks with a finite mindset and one that thinks with an infinite mindset. The concept stems from a 1984 book by James Cars called Finite and Infinite Games. In the infinite game, Sinek applies the concept to business. Infinite-minded companies last longer, achieve more, and are generally kinder and more beneficial to the world. Maintaining this mindset requires following a continuous 5-step cycle, Sinek says. Let us see what are the 5-step cycle. Advance a just cause, build trusting teams, learn from your worthy rivals, practice existential flexibility, demonstrate the courage to lead. These are the 5-step cycle Simon suggesting for maintaining the mindset for continuous infinite game. Let us see the top 3 lessons of this today's summary. In today's summary, we will look at the basics of finite and infinite thinking. Then we will go dig deeper into just cause and worthy rivals. So we will see what is this first step cycle and the third step cycle. There are finite and infinite games. Business is an infinite game and must therefore be played as such. You need to play business as an infinite game. A just cause is an appealing vision of the future that pulls people in, and it must satisfy 5 criteria to work. And the third important lesson that we are going to see today is every infinite-minded business needs a worthy rival to learn from. Do you want to build a company that can last for generations and 100 years or more? Then let's jump into the infinite game of business. Lesson number 1. The world is full of both finite and infinite games, but business is infinite and must be played with an according infinite mindset only. Soccer is an example of a finite game. There is a limited field on which the game is played. The rules are clear. There is a set time for when the game begins and when the game ends. A mechanism for keeping score and a list of winners and losers after the fact. Even cricket is also a finite game. Naturally, finite games inspire short-term thinking. You have to win immediately, and the only way to win is to kick your opponent out of the game. Elections, casting shows, and all sporting competitions are finite games. Yesterday, we have seen the India versus Australia match. So it is also a finite game. Whereas, let us see the other side of the coin. Business, relationships, and education are on the other hand, which are infinite games. Business, relationships, and education. These are the infinite games. There is no defined beginning or end. New players join all the time. Others leave. There are rules, but they too constantly change. What the players do once they are on the field is largely up to them, and goal is to stay in the game rather than win. Let me repeat, all the sporting competitions comes under the finite games, whereas infinite games are business, relationships, and education. So in these games, new people join and new players join. Some people might leave. The world is full of both finite and infinite games, and problems occur when we play infinite games with a finite mindset. When the FIFA gave the 2022 World Cup to Qatar as an example, they did so primarily because they paid a lot of money. They also reneged on fan and player privileges, like alcohol in stadiums and the LGBT armband. Fans slammed the FIFA for its short-term thinking. They boycotted ticket sales, jerseys, and even stopped watching altogether. The same experience happened yesterday. A lot of fans of cricket fans felt the same situation yesterday. Business is an infinite game. If you play it, think long term, cooperate with others, and try to keep playing rather than winning. So in the business, relationship, and education as an infinite game, you need to play for long run, not for winning. Let us see the second lesson. Infinite thinking requires a just cause, and yours must meet 5 criteria to keep you advancing with your purpose. Sinek quotes a study that suggests S&P 500 company lifespans have declined by over 40 years, from 61 years on an average to 18. Do you know why? Only fewer companies try to advance a just cause. What is a just cause means? A just cause is a specific vision of a future state that does not yet exist. A future state so appealing that people are willing to make sacrifices in order to help advance toward the vision. Like Apple have their own vision to challenge the status quo. Sinek says it must have the following 5 traits. Let us see what are the 5 criteria that infinite thinking requires a just cause. It must be for something rather than just against something. Like I have explained about Microsoft meeting and Apple meeting. As Microsoft event presenters are focused on how they were going to beat Apple, whereas Apple event they are trying to help teachers learn and help students learn. In the same way, it must be for something useful rather than just against something. Fighting for every human's right to eat is better than fighting against famine and starvation. And the second right is it must be inclusive. We only get excited about a vision we can clearly see. So if we have the clarity, then only we can get excitement and we can move further. And the third trait that we need to have for infinite thinking is it must be service oriented. The primary beneficiary of the cause must be someone other than the business itself. And the fourth trait we need to have is it must be resilient. Will you build trains instead of cars? If that is where the world is headed, you should. And the fifth trait you need to have is it must be idealistic. Your vision should provide inspiration for the next coming generations, not be something you can get done by the next week. So what are the 5 traits? It must be something rather than just get against of something. Means it must be useful and it must be inclusive. It must be service oriented and it must be resilient and it must be idealistic. Our just cause is this. We want to build a world in which every person reads at least 1 page a day and no human child or adult is afraid to open any book. This is our just cause we have set in our Leader Lifestyle Hub. We want to build a world in which every person reads at least 1 page a day and no human child or adult is afraid to open any book. Try defining one for yourself and see if it meets all the criteria. Let us move on to the lesson number 3. Worthy rivals feels like competitors, but they can actually help us learn and improve. For many years, Simon Sinek had a silent competition against with the Adam Grant, author of the originals book. When he finally met Adam Grant at an event, Sinek realized that the way I saw him had nothing to do with him. It had to do with me. Instead of trying to beat his competitor, Sinek finally appreciated Grant as a worthy rival, someone whose strengths and skills he could learn from. So whenever you feel someone as a competitor, you need to appreciate them and you need to learn what are the strengths and skills that they are established. Most of the time in business, the pie is big enough for everyone. And it's better to focus on growing the pie altogether than to try and snag the pieces of your neighbor's plate. Everyone in the business world have their own pie. Analyzing a worthy rival will make you better at what you do. It will also help you gain clarity on why you are doing it. Embrace competitors as co-players and you will slowly adapt a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity, which will get you to focus on your just cause more so than who's ever's about to beat you. This is what differentiated Apple from Microsoft through much of the early 2000s, and it is the reason it is still the most valuable company in the world today. Let me repeat the quotation. I love this quotation. That is the reason I have selected this book. Our lives are finite, but life is infinite. We are the finite players in the infinite game of life. We come and go, we are born and we die. And life still continues with us or without us. So this is one of the powerful quotations I learned from this book, The Infinite Game. And I love this example as well. In the Microsoft event, the majority of the presenters thought about how the presentation should beat Apple, whereas in the Apple event, 100% of the presenters spent their time to help teachers teach and help students learn. This is the difference of mindset. And we have seen the 5 steps cycle for infinite minded companies: advance a just cause, build trusting teams, learn from your worthy rivals, healthy competitors, practice existential flexibility, and demonstrate the courage to live. So that's how we are started our journey of 200 book summaries. We are heading on that. So we will hit the target before the December 31st of this year. And we will see what are the things that we have learned and what we have implemented as well. So let me repeat the 3 lessons again. There are finite and infinite games, whereas business is an infinite game and must therefore be played as an infinite game only. What are the finite games? What are the infinite games? Any sport competition, whether it may be soccer, whether it may be cricket, whether it may be any sport, will comes under the finite game. Why? Because it inspires short-term thinking, win or lose, and to kick the opponent only. Whereas the business, relationships, and education comes under the infinite games. Why? Because new people come here and other people might live in between. So these things should be played as an infinite mindset. And how to do that? We have given 5 steps for having the criteria, which will be useful, inclusive, service-oriented, resilient, and idealistic. And finally, you need to learn from the worthy rivals. Just find out who is your worthy rival and you can learn from them and to improve. That's what we have seen today's book summary. And we have set the target of at least next 4 books in the business related books only. We are in the 10 book summaries in the business journey. We'll see what will be the next 3 summaries in the business as well. I hope so. This is very clear. And if you are the someone who feel tantrum of losing a game yesterday, just get back to your work and work on these 3 things: business, relationships, and education. Thank you so much. See you in another book summary. If you have any queries, you can shoot out right now. And do like, share, subscribe.